Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to go over my June wrap-up and my July TBR. But before we do that, if you could hit the like and subscribe button, even the notification bell, that really helps me out and I really appreciate those little clicks. They always make my day. Always a big thank you to my subscribers and frequent flyers. Now let's get started. In the month of June, I read a total of 7 books. I read The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells, Genderqueer by Maia Kobabe, The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, Lasher by Anne Rice, which is the second book in the Lives of the Mayfair Witches series, In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, and Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the first book in the Southern Reach trilogy. So overall, it was a really solid month. To Kill a Mockingbird is a 24 in 2024 book for me, so I was glad to squeeze one of those in this month. And then I don't really read graphic novels, so to read Genderqueer and get that on my list, and also just to read a banned book was really good as well. The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells is a classic sci-fi and suspense novel. And I started listening to this on audiobook when I was at work one night, but I ended up enjoying it much more as an ebook. Feel like when I was listening to it on audiobook, I was spacing out quite a bit, and it really is a book that you want to pay attention to get that full suspense experience. And this is a book about a strange man who arrives in a small town in England. He is wrapped head to toe in bandages and clothing that cover him entirely. He secludes himself into his room in the inn that he rents, where he conducts experiments, and these experiments have turned him invisible, but they have also driven him mad, made him very cruel and aggressive, and soon the townspeople turn on him. And I did enjoy this book. I gave it 4 stars overall. I think I might have even liked it more if I hadn't listened to it on audiobook at all. I would recommend this for people who like sci-fi. It is very much an underappreciated sci-fi and suspense book, and I definitely would recommend it for a nice quick read. The pacing was a smidgen slow for me, but I did also, when listening to it, really enjoy the narrator. I felt like he was doing really good voices, and just be aware that the Invisible Man is a total dickwad, and you are not going to like him very much as a protagonist. Genderqueer by Maia Kobabe is an LGBTQIA+ memoir in graphic novel format, and it is about Maia, who has questioned her gender and sexuality since childhood. The story explains her experiences with questioning one's identity and how this journey affected her life and relationships socially, intimately, and professionally. And I read this book because someone at work, a friend of mine, had asked me why it was so banned, and I really didn't know. So I went investigating, and overall, I thought maybe 1 or 2 panels in this book were not the most child appropriate or child friendly, but overall didn't really understand why it would be banned for quote unquote pornographic material when it really wasn't all that bad. I mean, the couple of panels that I thought were not the best for children, maybe just slap some tape over it and call it a day. I don't know why everybody gets their panties in a bunch, but that's all right. I personally gave this book 3 stars, and mostly because I felt that the story was a bit disjointed and unorganized. It wasn't really a fluent story as much as it was just a gathering of Maia's memories and experiences that weren't really told in any particular format. It was a little bit all over the place, and the ending was so abrupt that I actually hadn't realized that the book ended until I couldn't swipe anymore. But I did think that a lot of the art was really beautiful, and there was a quote in the book that I really liked, which was, "I found the concepts of relationships deeply confusing. What exactly did people get out of them? And friend, I could not agree more. I also am very confused about relationships." So I would recommend this book to people who would like to have a better understanding of others in the LGBTQIA+ community. If you don't have maybe a lot of exposure to people in that community, or you have a lot of questions that you're not comfortable asking individuals, I think this might be a good read, because I did have a lot of information in here that I found very interesting. The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman is a magical realism fantasy book with just a smidge of horror thrown in. And this was a book that I read for A Tale of Two Trails to Battle. This was our group book, and our prompt was a book that features water. And this book is about a man who returns to his hometown to attend a funeral, but is instead drawn to a pond at the end of the lane where he lived as a child. Memories long forgotten begin to surface as he gazes into the water. Memories of Letty Hemstock, monsters, worms, hungry birds, a cat with one white ear, and just why did Letty call the pond an ocean? I loved everything about this book. I gave it 5 stars. This is only my 3rd or 4th book of the year that I've given 5 stars. And I've got to say that a lot of my teammates did not feel the same. A lot of people DNF'd it, found it disturbing, and, trigger warnings, there is child abuse in here, and trigger warnings for the squeamish, that even I was squeamish during one particular scene. But I overall thought it was very, very good. It was very vivid. The imagery was fantastic. And it really leaves everything up to interpretation. It's a very ambiguous ending. You don't really know what happened. And I love that kind of story. Me personally, I love that kind of story, but I know a lot of people want definitive answers, but I felt that the story was about our male narrator, and the answers themselves belong to the Hemstock women in the book. So I really loved that it ended the way that it did. And I would definitely 1,000% recommend this book to anybody who loves fairy tales, myths, or fables. I felt it was a really good version of a childhood fable. And there was a quote from the book that, of course, I, as a book reader myself, love, and that is, books were safer than other people anyway. And always, yes, 10 out of 10 times, I will pick books over people. So I really loved this book. I look forward to reading more Neil Gaiman. I've never read a Neil Gaiman story before. This was my first, and it was a really great introduction to his world. Lasher by Anne Rice is a dark fantasy horror novel. It is the 2nd book in the Lives of the Mayfair Witches series. This was a book left over from my spring TBR from my library card game, and my prompt was next in a series and people on the cover. And I'm going to give a little synopsis of this book, so if you don't want any spoilers, just go ahead and skip ahead to the next one, because this book is also, let me tell you, not for the faint of heart. How many crimes can be committed against a woman? I'm not sure, but Anne Rice sure as hell went for the trophy. Rowan had some of the worst experiences ever. The women in the Mayfair family were brutalized in multiple ways, and it was just not a fun time to read. And just for a little synopsis of this book, now born again into flesh, Lasher and Rowan disappear. The Mayfair family women begin dying mysteriously. Michael recovers from his previous encounter with Lasher. Aryan recons with the Talismaka, and Mona Mayfair sheds her innocence. As the family searches for Rowan, Lasher holds her captive, desperate to create other beings of his own kind, the Taltos. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I think even if it wouldn't have been unbelievably weird, as far as crimes against women were concerned, I still wouldn't have loved it. The story follows multiple characters, but they all kind of read the same. There wasn't a lot of variety in the way people were speaking or what they were saying. They really didn't have unique voices or personality, with the exception of maybe Mona. And Lasher has his own way of talking, but nobody wants to hear that motherfucker talk anyway. These chapters really could have been edited down. A lot of it was really repetitive. You would hear one story from one person's perspective, and then the next chapter would be a similar story from their perspective, and it was just really repetitive. And I found myself, there are so many Mayfairs, this family puts the Targaryens to shame with their incest and can't keep up with their names and that kind of shit. I wish I would have had a family tree to read along with this book, because I was getting mad confused. And mind you, I can recite Game of Thrones and the Targaryens to you backwards, but even this had me confused. And there is one more book in this series, but I felt it was pretty well wrapped up with the ending of this book. I think it could have been a duology, so I'm not really sure where the story has to go from here, but I will be reading the 3rd and final book in this series at some point. I don't so much recommend this book as I think if you're an Anne Rice fan, you're going to read it, but I wouldn't really recommend this book to pretty much anyone else. Only if you're an Anne Rice fan are you going to read, enjoy, tolerate this book the way that it has to be tolerated in the grander scheme of the Vampire Chronicles and the Mayfair Witches and everything that has to be combined to make that story in that universe. But I only gave this book 3.5 stars. I kind of a lot don't recommend it. In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware is a thriller and was Ruth's debut novel. I used this book as my Buzzwordathon book for the prompt for June being repeating words, and I also used this book for A Tale of Two Trails the Battle when stealing a prompt, which their prompt was to read a thriller. I did not like this book. I gave this book only 2 stars, and it wasn't me, it was the book. It was that bad. After 10 absent years, Nora is invited to an old friend's hen do, which is like a bachelorette party, in the woods in rural England. Suspicious from the start, Nora finds herself obligated to attend. After odd happenings make the group paranoid, an intruder is shot and a diabolical plan is revealed. I gave this book only 2 stars, and it wasn't that this book wasn't for me, it's that this book was not a good thriller. Not one likable character in the cast. I felt a really interesting setting was wasted. They're in, a house in the woods that's got a lot of glass walls and, you feel like you're being watched. It makes you a little bit paranoid, which came into play, but not really. So I felt like the setting was really wasted. Nora has many varieties of her name. Her name is actually Leonora or Leonora, and she once went by Lee. Somebody called her Leo. She just has a lot of varieties in her name, and people keep calling her a name that she doesn't want to be called, which was annoying. And I predicted every step of this book, and a thriller should not be that predictable, in my opinion. I felt like the motivations of the perpetrator of the crime was really stupid. The main characters, all of them still hold grudges from high school, and that was stupid. Let me tell you that 10 years after high school, you don't give a damn. The antagonist of this book, peaked in high school, is a mean person and just never got over it. I would not recommend this book to literally anyone. There are way better thrillers out there, so I would definitely say to skip this one. And I don't think I'm going to be revisiting Ruth Ware as an author. I know they're kind of popular as far as thrillers are concerned. I see their books out there a lot, but this book just really did not vibe for me. I really did not like it. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee is a classic historical fiction novel, and it is also a 24 in 2024 book for me, and it is from my summer reading list from my library card game. And my genre I landed on was realistic fiction, and my prompt was a book with a tree on the cover. I feel like everyone and their mother has read this book except for me. I was supposed to read this book in my 10th grade college English class and just decided I had an attitude and wasn't going to do that. But I'm glad I didn't read it in high school because I really wouldn't have appreciated it for what it is as much as I did as an adult. Set in 1930s Alabama, Scout, Jem, and their father Atticus are dealing with the social fallout of defending a black man accused of rape. And I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really great. I did think the first 1/3 of the book was a bit slow, but once you get into the case itself and into Atticus defending Tom Robinson, I felt like the book really picked up and became a lot more interesting. I will say that the liberal use of the N-word in this book was unlike any other. I have never seen so many N-bombs in a book before. Wow. Even for that time period. Jeez Louise, man. They just let it go, and it was so uncomfortable to read. But I did like the book overall, and I would recommend it to anyone who hasn't read it, except for my friend Bianca, who would absolutely hate everything about this book. Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer is the first book in the Southern Reach trilogy. It is a sci-fi dystopian novel, and it is from my summer reading list from my library card game. The space that I landed on was sci-fi, and the prompt was a 1-word title. I was really excited to read this book because I've seen the movie, and I thought the movie was really creepy, eerie, scary, filled with tension. And this book was completely different, but very good in their own rights. Both the movie and the book were very good. I gave this book 4.25 stars, and I'm not really sure how to show that with the star emojis I have, so we're just going to play with whatever this is. Expedition 12 enters Area X, a contained zone where nature has taken over civilization that once thrived and has transformed it into Eden. The biologist and 3 other volunteers quickly find themselves entangled in a mystery surrounding an unknown structure that descends into the earth. Why is it there? What is it? And what creature writes on the walls? Everything about this book, I felt like anything you think you know, throw it out the window, because you don't. And you're not going to get any answers in this book. Maybe I'll get some answers in another book, but I definitely didn't get them in this one. It was all unsolved mystery. And I would recommend this book to people who don't mind having, an ambiguous ending where you don't have all the answers, where things are left up to interpretation, where you really don't know what the hell is going on. And maybe you'll never know what the hell is going on, because she certainly didn't. Our narrator certainly didn't. But it was really, really interesting. So if you are into like unsolved mysteries, you like aliens, because it feels very an alien-esque kind of book, like this would be a book I could recommend to you. Like, I really enjoyed it. It's very short at 195 pages. So if you want a really quick, interesting read and the atmosphere in this book was amazing. You could smell the earth, you can smell the salt water, you can hear the creatures rustling in the reeds. Like, it was so amazingly written, so I would definitely recommend checking this one out. And those were all 7 books that I read in June. Now, by far my favorite was The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, and a book that I would light on fire is In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. That book offended me so much, I'm pretty sure I'm going to actually unhaul it, and I never unhaul my books. Now let's move on to what I'm reading in July. July's TBR is a little bit tentative right now, not completely set in stone. I played my library card game and have my summer TBR established for the season. It has like 13 or 14 books on it that I'm going to be selecting from for this month and also for August. As always, I'll be taking part in A Tale of Two Trails The Battle, and I'm also going to be participating in the Buzzwordathon for this month, and the word for this month is measurement. So let me at least tell you the books I know I'm going to be reading, and then maybe I'll give you a couple of prospective reads as well. Starting with Tales from Two Trails, The Battle, hosted by Kim and Julie. Kim is at Expedition Through Pages. I will leave both of their links below. And I am on Team A, the Pirates team, which is captained by Julie. And our 3 prompts this month are a book by your favorite author, a book from your book list, and a book that spans different eras. So for these prompts, I am a little bit tentative on what I'll be doing for a few of them, but here's what we have. So my favorite author is George R.R. Martin, and I will either be reading The World of Ice and Fire or The Ice Dragon. I've started The World of Ice and Fire, but it is a tedious read, so I might switch it up for something a little bit more fun and just purchase an ebook of The Ice Dragon, which I have not read yet. So that would be exciting for me. For a book from a book list, I'll be picking from my 24 in 2024 list, and I have 2 of these on my summer TBR. I have Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, and I have The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Either of these would work for this prompt. It's kind of just a matter of long book versus short book. Even though I want to read both of these this summer, I'm not sure which would be more beneficial for me to read during the month of June just yet, so it's going to be one of those 2. And finally, for a book that spans different eras, this will be our group book assigned by Julie. It is The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, and I started off last month reading an H.G. Wells book, so it's only fitting that I shove this one in here as well. I actually really enjoyed The Invisible Man, so I think I'll also be enjoying The Time Machine as well. Next up, we have the Buzzwordathon for July, and our buzzword is measurement. Now, this can mean cup, tablespoon, teaspoon, inch, mile, foot, deep, instruments of measurement, and with that in mind, I will be reading Red Clocks by Lenny Zumas. Now, the buzzword that qualifies this for the prompt is clocks. Clocks are an instrument of measurement that we use to measure time, and the story Red Clocks itself is a dystopian set in America. where abortion is illegal, in vitro fertilization is banned, and the Personhood Amendment grants right of life, liberty, and property to every embryo. In a small Oregon fishing town, 5 very different women navigate these new barriers alongside age-old questions surrounding motherhood, identity, and freedom. As an American female, this book is very relevant and almost a little too close to home, but I really enjoy these kind of dystopians that could really happen. You know, I don't think Terminator is about to come through a time warp after us and try to find John Connor, but I do think that women's reproductive rights are being taken away. So this kind of book is something that really would scare me to my core, so I'm really looking forward to reading it. Now let's talk about Library Card. Library Card is the TBR game that I play every season, and this past round I think I got 13 or 14 books on my TBR that I was going to read between the last 2 weeks of June, July, and the month of August. So I'm going to be reading some of these books this month and then the rest of them next month, but I'm not sure what I want to read so much right now as much as I'll be like mood reading from this pile throughout the month. And if you didn't see my TBR video, I will leave the link in the description box for you so you could watch me play the entire game and pick these books, but let's quickly just kind of go through them. 2 of my Library Card books I've already read. That would be To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee and Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. 2 of the books I've already mentioned being Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell and The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. The 10 other books that I will be reading between July and August are Pretty Girls by Karin Slaughter, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, Season of Storms, a Witcher novel by Andrzej Sapkowski. I always say that wrong. The Judas Blossom by Stephen Aryan. This is book 1 of the Nightingale and the Falcon series. Reclaim the Stars, 17 Tales Across Realms and Space. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. South of the Buttonwood Tree by Heather Weber. Confessions of a Serial Killer, The Untold Story of Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer by Dr. Katherine Ramsland. Shark Heart, a Love Story by Emily Habeck. And The Deep by Alma Katsu. And that'll do it. That was a lot of books. I hope you have a wonderful July. I hope you have a wonderful summer and read all the lovely books you want to read. Comment down below if you've read any of the books that I've read or am going to be reading. Let me know what you're reading this summer if you have any more suggestions. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.